Hello, my name is Gary Gurok, and welcome to the Gary Gurok Show. This is my first podcast, and today I'm going to be talking about bullying and the bullying I've experienced growing up through the school days. And before I was officially diagnosed with DCD dyspraxia, I was diagnosed in 2012 after having a psychological evaluation that I initiated and went to an external psychologist rather than in the school. But ever since I was in kindergarten in about 1977, 1978, and through high school 1990, or I had psychological evaluations every other year, but they just talked about learning disabilities. They didn't give me any insight to what I actually have. I was diagnosed with DCD dyspraxia and the comorbidities of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, along with central auditory processing disorder and dyscalculia, and I also had dyslexia, which was undiagnosed until 2012. And so the bullying started in kindergarten when I was wearing a Fred Flintstone costume. Kids were making random comments about it, or just basically bringing negative attention to it. And that's all I remember about kindergarten. Otherwise, one time I was sent to the corner, and I had no idea what I did wrong. Then I noticed I had problems with my manual dexterity because I could not open a milk carton. And the teacher had become irritated with me every time I asked her to open my milk carton because I would always do it wrong. And it's one of those paper milk cartons you tear open and it just didn't open. I couldn't drink the milk. Or back then, that's when we had graham crackers and the choice of chocolate milk or white milk for a kindergarten snack. And then moving on to first grade. First grade was easier because I was in a group with a group of kids that also had similar problems as I. So there wasn't much bullying. So I enjoyed first grade. It was one of my best school years that I had. And then second grade, the bullying came back. Or it started, I was bullied by teachers and bullied by students. And also, I also was exposed to my learning disabilities, were becoming more and more exposed in second grade. I remember in second grade, I had problems with tying my shoes. I didn't know how to tie my shoes yet. And the year before, at the end of first grade, the gym teacher gave me a hard time about not being able to tie my shoes. And he said, "You better learn how to tie your shoes." And then on the first day of gym class in second grade, the gym teacher asked me if I learned how to tie my shoes. And I said no. I said yes because I was scared of what he would do, even though I did not know how to tie my shoes yet. And then we did the 50-yard dash, and I just shoved my shoelaces into my shoe And then I started running, and then the whole shoe became undone. So he noticed that, and then he yelled at me in front of the entire class and saying, "Nobody's going to help you tie your shoes." And he told everyone not to help me. So then that day I went home from school in tears, and I got pulled out of gym class for the remainder of that year, and ended up going to occupational therapy and adapted ed, which was like a modified one-on-one class for the rest of that year. And then also in second grade, I was harassed by the music teacher because I could not find the pages in the music book fast enough. So he was giving me a hard time about that in front of the class, and then he like kept me after class and yelling. And I told him that I had to get going because I was going to be late for going to another class, and he yelled at me for and saying, "You don't tell adults what to do," and blah blah blah. Well, secretively, fortunately, in third grade, he eventually died of a stroke, and I was secretly happy that he wasn't there anymore. And then the other harassment I had was with other classmates because wasn't able to finish my schoolwork, and I was continuously threatened to have to stay after school. And there was a busybody girl in my class who loved to constantly threaten students with that, and I got mad and decided to leave. So I left school and went home because I was tired of constantly being harassed and threatened that I would have to stay after school because I had trouble doing my schoolwork. And then they ended up calling my mom and straightening it out. I didn't really get in trouble. They just told me not to do it again because it was a stressful situation. And then also during that time period, we had to do math problems on a record player, or it would read out math problems. You had to quickly write down the answers to it, and I just wrote down any answer just to keep up with the rest of the class. So I wasn't really learning anything in math. So the problem just continued, and eventually I got pulled into more and more LD classes with one-on-one intention with a LD teacher. And then that was basically second grade. And the most of the kids, I didn't have any friends at this point. Most of the kids were hostile to me in that class. And then third grade was nicer because I had the teacher I had for first grade and I liked her. And also that year, it was about 1980, 1981, when a new kid moved to town, and he also had learning disabilities, and then we became friends because we're kind of in the same boat. So then we became good friends, and then it was the first kind of friend where I went by his house and he came by my house, and then would do birthday parties and stuff like that. So that was pretty neat. I started having normal, kind of doing normal friend activities because before that I missed out on that. And then third grade continued on, and then, or my friend, we had the same nasty gym teacher as we did, or I did at the beginning of second grade. And then he started harassing him because he had the wrong kind of shoes. And then he would like to castigate him in front of the class. And he like was starting to pull the same crap again. And then we were good friends through third grade, and then fourth grade we were in the same class. But the rest of the kids were hostile, and the teacher was basically a bitch, to be blunt, and was continued to be harassed in fourth grade, and then went to middle school, and then that teacher is basically a bitch. I'm not gonna hold any punches because she was, and the kids were hostile, but we were in the same class in fifth grade, my friend and I, when we sort of stuck together. And then the other kids in the class were jealous because we were in additional LD classes and we got to go on a field trip, but not the rest of the kids. So then there's animosity from them and the teacher. And also the other kids would not let us have look at things that they would bring into show and tell and say, don't let Gary see it. And the other guy, I won't say my friend's name to protect his identity. And then that was in fifth grade. And one good thing that happened in fifth grade is that my friend and I were pulled out of regular gym class again and had adapted Phi Ed instead of regular gym class. And then sixth grade we were separated, and so then I was back on my own again without or access. I did not have any other friends, or I guess they couldn't keep us in the same class forever, but I did not make any new friends. So in sixth grade, the first day, I heard kids' comments about, oh, look at, they said, damn it, Gary's in my class. And I don't know whatever I did to them. But one day, I was regularly visiting an LD teacher's in LD class for math and English and reading, and then I would come back to a regular classroom for science and social studies, and then the related arts classes. And then at the beginning of sixth grade, I had to always ask the teacher for my combination number because I had trouble remembering the combination to my locker. And then I was harassed by the girls in that class about that, until one day I came back to my homeroom, and apparently, or the kids were unusually nice to me, and I thought this was very weird. Then I came in the classroom and sat down, and I looked at the chalkboard, and the words the golden rule were written across the chalkboard, and the words do unto others as you would have them do unto you was written on there. And I found out later that somebody said something nasty about me or in class, and then the teacher heard it, so then she yelled at the class and lectured them on the golden rule. So then after that, the rest of the school year, I was treated better, and then actually made some semi friends, or everyone was more pleasant after that. Except for the point in group activity, I was sort of excluded, still excluded from doing stuff in group activities, but it was better than it used to be. And then that year I was bullied by a young man who said I was ugly and I would never have a girlfriend and never get married. But later in life, he had karma visited on him because I saw him sitting at a bar at a wedding, and he was overweight and not so good looking, or I don't know what his standard of good looking was, but probably an ugly person on the inside to be mean enough to say stuff like that to people. And it's like, wow, he sort of had some karma. He's not so, uh, he wasn't all that in the bag of chips like he was, or he thought he was in middle school and high school. Or otherwise, he said that to me, and he was harassing me in this art class. Then I complained to the teacher, and then the teachers took his side. So then I had no use for that art teacher. And then moving on to seventh grade, at this time I was separated from my friend that I had earlier in grade school. This is moving to seventh grade, and then it's about 1984. And I did not have any friends, really, and then I was being harassed again. Or just like a normal day. And that was the year we had this thing called outdoor ed. And it's where you go to camp for a couple days at a state-run campground, a youth camp. It was in the state forest. And then that was sort of a miserable time. I had an upper respiratory infection, then I got sick and was throwing up. And that it wasn't really fun. And then going on a survival hike and getting eaten alive by mosquitoes and running around with an upper respiratory infection. And then eighth grade, the harassment continued. I was harassed by girls in the classroom sitting next to me. And then this boy harassed me, and then he had, like, pulled down his pants and exposed himself to me, his butt. So I don't know what was up with that. And then the harassment turned into prank phone calls where somehow he got my phone number and started calling me and pretending to be another kid that I was sort of friends with in class and saying, "Do you want to come over and play or do stuff?" But it was actually this kid who harassed me, kept giving me prank phone calls, and I don't know how he got access to my phone number. Or this was in the 80s, so there was no internet at the time. This was old-fashioned telephone prank calling. So he did that for a while, and then I got onto him and knew that it was a prank. Or I wish I had the technology back then where I could trace the call. But he was basically a jerk, and then didn't see him again, but I saw his profile on Facebook like recently, years later, and I showed him on a sailboat somewhere like Florida or something, and he still looked a lot the same. And that was 8th grade, and then or then I went on to high school, and for a while, the harassment let up a little bit until I was a sophomore in like 10th grade. Yeah, it was about 10th grade. It was a rough year where I was harassed by a shop teacher where he grabbed me by the shirt sleeve and said I ought to kick you in the ass for screwing around. And I wasn't. He was like a bully. And then that was a special class where they had a teacher who, it was like a LD teacher that was in the room kind of supposed to be helping and observing, but she was a bitch. And because I complained about how the teacher treated me, and then my mom reported it to the principal, and then she retaliated against me for complaining about that teacher, because you know those teachers stick together. Well, it was also weird that was another teacher who harassed me that ended up dying. He ended up getting cancer in his knees. And that just seems weird. That teachers who give me a hard time all of a sudden later. That's the second teacher who died that I had. And then I was harassed in high school. I was spat on. And then I started fighting, not like physically fighting back, but standing up for my legal rights. So then I would go to the library and research the Wisconsin state statutes on harassment and like civil procedure. I started researching that kind of stuff in the library to see if there was anything legally I could do to fight back. Or started studying up on the law and stuff like that. And then I was accused of having lice, and this girl in the class started spreading rumors that I had lice, and she would have to go to the emergency room and blah blah blah. But she was kind of like a drama queen, mentally unstable, or got attention by stirring up trouble kind of person, until that backfired on her, because then my mom came to the school and threatened legal action if she would continue to harass me. And then they backed off as soon as my mom started threatening legal action and uh, acquiring an attorney. And then they sort of backed off a little bit, but it was still harassed on and off, but not as much. And then I started handling it if I was harassed by someone, and I just went to the principal myself and took care of it. I didn't involve my mother or anything. I went and complained to the principal myself. And then I was harassed by a person who is a year older than I am, or in the grade above me. And he's currently, nowadays, he's the mayor of our city that I live in. And he used to harass me in the library and steal my school bag and hide it. I would go somewhere in the library and then I'd come back and it'd be gone. So then I reported him to the principal. And funny enough, it's probably the perfect personality for someone to be a politician. That only a politician could be that kind of conniving troublemaker. And that was in high school. And then I had occasional bullying. And then I graduated from high school. And then they gave me crap going to the graduation ceremony, and it's like I was happy because it was the last day I had to deal with these people. That it was a good feeling knowing that after that day I would not have to deal with those people anymore. So graduation ceremony, getting my diploma, and leaving that place, that was one of the best days of my life. And so that was my experience with being bullied in the school year. So I'm going to end this podcast, this episode here. And thank you very much for listening. And stick around, there will be more to come.